Australia's Prime Minister has avoided answering whether his country's Navy paid the crew of a boat carrying migrants to return to Indonesian waters. Indonesian police say the crew was found with about $30,000 in cash after being intercepted by the Navy on their way to Australia. Hydra Bassi reports.
Asylum seekers are intercepted off the coast of Australia. The government has introduced tough measures to stop people attempting the journey. Offshore detention centres have been set up in the Pacific Islands, and the Australian military has towed boats full of people back to where they came from. But is a new tactic also being used? Prime Minister Abbott was asked on a radio show whether the Australian Navy had paid people smugglers $5,000 each to turn back their boats. He didn't deny the allegation. Instead, he said this.
What the government has done is stop the boats. We have stopped the boats. And we've used a whole range of measures. We will do whatever we reasonably can, consistent with the principles of a decent and humane society, to ensure that the boats stay stopped, and I am never ever going to apologise.
Indonesian police say migrants are reporting that the Navy offered crews money to turn back last month. People who work with refugees say the Australian government needs to come clean over the issue.
This whatever it takes by hook or crook approach, which we now hear in the highest ranks of government, is an unacceptable position for a country that has signed up to the Refugees Convention, because our government at the highest levels is suggesting, it seems, that when it comes to asylum seekers at sea, there is no moral compass and no moral limit. And that is not only astonishing and appalling, but completely unacceptable as a position to take.
Opposition parties are demanding an investigation to see if any laws have been broken. They also say that if true, this policy may backfire, encouraging more people smugglers to risk the journey to Australia. Haider Abbasi, Al Jazeera.
Joining me now is Kathryn Cronin. She's a barrister working in immigration and human rights law. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
So, are you surprised by this claim?
Unfortunately not. I mean, Australia has a very poor record in terms of the way it deals with refugees, and they are ever escalating the sorts of punitive responses to them. So this is, and for their head of state to come out and say they will do things by crook is essentially to attest to an improper or an illegal approach to immigration processing and refugee resettlement.
Yeah, I mean, we heard him say that he wouldn't apologise for anything, and one of the quotes that he had is, what we're doing is saving lives at sea, we're defending our national sovereignty, we're protecting our country from the evil trade of people smuggling. Do you think that resonates well with the home audience in Australia? Is that what this is about?
It may well resonate with some of the home audience. Obviously, there are many critics of his policies in any event. But the thing that is extraordinary about it is to enmesh yourself with crime syndicates. I mean, we hear so much of these smuggling crime syndicates, and the government itself stresses how badly they behave, how much mistreatment, how much exploitation. So to be actually leaving people under their controls and actually paying them, not only getting money from the migrants who are desperate to come to Australia, but then the government giving them a fare on the way back is an extraordinary and perverse incentive.
I mean, I suppose at the moment we haven't had an outright denial of it, so that's left room for this to be out there. The Greens in Australia are saying that we need a proper, thorough investigation. We need the Prime Minister to start being straight with the Australian people to identify whether indeed we have Australian officials handing out wads of cash to people traffickers. Either it happened or it didn't. Be upfront about it. How likely is a thorough investigation going to happen? How is it likely we'll actually ever find out whether it has happened or not?
Well, these things do have a habit of coming out, but I think there are numbers of ways in which Australia is already in breach of the Refugee Convention. Their offshore processing system, the penalties that they impose. I mean, the Refugee Convention doesn't allow you to impose penalties on people who come to your country without proper visa authorisation, and Australia does imposes those penalties in spades, really. Their detention policies, their paying Cambodia to take the people they have found to be refugees. All of this is really a failure to live up to the principles and the legalities of the Refugee Convention.
And how concerned are people generally about the fact that there might be some kind of breaches of the refugee? I mean, we've we've talked certainly in Europe about the fact that, you know, governments want to do everything to kind of look as though they're keeping immigrants out often. So presumably that's the case in this particular case, in Australia's case, they want to look like they're acting tough. Is there a likelihood that that policy will change, or do you think we're going to carry on like that?
The problem in Australia is that these international instruments have no bite. And so the government can effectively avoid their strictures and avoid their spirit. And that is what the Australian government is doing persistently and consistently. It's different in Europe, where you have conventions that are incorporated into our domestic law so that our courts can enforce them. In Australia, these international conventions, such as the Refugee Convention, can't directly be enforced by Australian courts. So it allows the government to avoid the obligations that they've signed up to in international law.
OK, Kathryn Cronin, thank you very much indeed for your expertise on the subject. Thank you.